Welcome back. Let's put the spotlight on the AI sector. Loong from WhiteOak Capital is now joining us here in the studio. Thank you very much for joining in here. So you're sitting in Singapore and you're making the investments for WhiteOak Capital in emerging markets ex of India.
That's right.
Right. So tell us what you like right now. First is a top down, and then we'll get chatting about AI and whether you fear that there is a bubble building up.
Sure. So at WhiteOak, the way we invest is very much bottom-up stock picking. So we're actually finding ideas all over the markets. So be it the sectors that you've just touched on, be it things like electric vehicles, humanoid robots, sectors like entertainment in Korea. So, companies that are involved in K-pop. So they're across emerging markets. We're genuinely finding ideas all over the place at the moment.
Okay, and how do you feel about AI? There is fear of a bubble building up. Where do you stand on it?
So I think it's a very interesting place to be at the moment. So if we think about past bubbles like the dot-com bubble that we've seen, the internet bubble back then, it was all about hype and there was no earnings growth to go along with it. But today in the AI world, yes, there is definitely some hype and some excitement there, but the earnings growth that we're seeing is actually real. So you're seeing NVIDIA and a lot of these other companies delivering numbers. So if we look at the supply chain for AI hardware, that's actually coming almost exclusively from Asia, particularly Taiwan and South Korea. So a lot of opportunities over there.
So which part of the value chain is looking very interesting to you, where you don't think there's a bubble or a valuation trouble right now?
It'd be fair to say that there is excitement in most parts of the supply chain, but I think if you kind of look beyond the obvious names. So one thing about WhiteOak is we have teams on the ground in a lot of places and a very big team. So we like kind of digging through the weeds for maybe the lesser known opportunities. So if you look at maybe the hardware that supports some of AI, so be it power supply or be it custom chip designers, we think in these more niche sectors, you might find better opportunities.
But Loong, there has always been this worry about, you mentioned there is earnings growth, but is it justifying the kind of numbers that are being thrown out, right? Every other week you see a $50 billion, $100 billion deal that OpenAI is signing with companies. Where are they going to get that funds to finance those deals? And when do you even start realistically expecting a return on such kind of investments?
So I think the second part of the question is the critical one, because the first part, if you think about the hyperscalers who are spending the money, Google, Amazon, Meta, they have a lot of cash on their balance sheet. So a lot of this spending is being funded by cash at the moment. It's when companies like Oracle who start funding things from debt get involved, that's when the risk level starts to tick up. So in terms of the return, that's the critical question, right? I think that's the harder question to answer, because at the moment, for a lot of these companies, AI is a winner takes most market. So this is something that they have to spend on. Otherwise, their future business model is at risk. But at some point, you're right, that return will need to be earned, and that's what we're all waiting to see, when and how that comes about.
So, when we talk about AI, is usually what's happening in the US. As Hormuz also mentioned, we are talking about those big deals that keep getting announced. How is Asia positioning itself when it comes to AI? We largely talk about China, but there's Korea. You named other countries as well. Where does Asia stand in that point of view?
I think at the moment, Asia is very much the picks and shovels. So there is no AI without the companies in Taiwan, without the companies in Korea. All these companies that supply the tech hardware that goes into AI, we actually think that they might offer a very attractive opportunity at the moment, because whilst we argue about, who's going to get a return on their capex, the companies who are supplying the picks and shovels, they don't mind because they're the ones benefiting from the capex spend.
Okay. So that becomes the opportunity as compared to the hyperscalers is what you are trying to highlight.
Yes, exactly.
It's more attractive in Asia versus the US markets right now?
I would say, if you're picking between the hyperscalers, you're kind of deciding who has a better model, who might end up being the winner, and you have to make a decision on that. And sitting here at this point in time in such early innings of the AI revolution, it's hard to do. Whereas within Asia, companies who are there in the supply chain, they're supplying to all of these guys. So to them, they're not so bothered with who ends up winning because they'll be selling to whoever is left.
You would be comparing notes with your counterparts in India when it comes to technology. What do you all make of India's semiconductor aspirations at WhiteOak Capital?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. So I've had a lot of conversations with Neeraj, who covers that from Mumbai here. I think in the initial innings, if you talked maybe 12 months, 18, 24 months ago when semiconductors in India was first being announced, there was a lot of excitement that was going through the market, and maybe some of the deals that were being announced were maybe less realistic in terms of what could be achieved. But sitting in Singapore today, looking at what's happening in the Indian market, it's actually a lot more exciting because I think India is now playing to its strengths, a skilled labor force, abundant labor, entering the back end part of the semiconductor process where these kind of advantages make a difference. Then you build up the skill set there and then you start integrating into the more value added parts.
So, when we talk about, okay, the earnings growth that would come by or the opportunities that we have in the AI space, which Asia can build on, what are some of the risks in the immediate future that you think investors should be wary of?
I think within a sector where there is as much excitement as AI, it's always short-term volatility that happens. I mean, we saw it just last night, 2 nights ago in the US.
Yeah.
Just, a little bit of commentary and you see some volatility. So I think having the appetite to digest that kind of short-term volatility is one thing. But maybe the second part to think about is there are some companies where 80-90% of their revenues would come from AI at the moment. If that AI spending were to go away, these companies would be very badly impacted. But equally, there are a lot of companies where AI is a nice growth driver, but maybe 20-25% of revenues. If AI were to go away, those kind of companies would be more sustainable. So there are different ways to approach this, and it really depends on your appetite for risk and how you want to play it.
Interesting but short conversation. Loong, thank you so much for sparing time and joining us today, and look forward to having you more often in India.
Thanks for having me.
A good stay.
Thank you.
Take a short break here on Trading Hour. Back with more on the other side. Stay tuned.